I'm Raisa Bruner, and I'm joined today by the Chicks, Natalie Maines, Marty McGuire, and Emily Strayer, who are also members of the Time 100. Welcome to Time 100 Talks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's jump right in. This summer, you released your newest album, Gaslighter, your first one in 14 years. And even though it was delayed a bit from the spring and you haven't been able to tour, it's been very warmly received. And also the songs have felt more timely than ever, touching on protests and uplifting women and sisterhood. So what has the silver lining been for you about releasing new music into this strange new world?
I'm just glad we got the album done before COVID hit. There are a lot of artists who were probably stuck right in the middle of their project, and I know the way that the three of us work, and we would not have been able to do that remotely. We really need to be in the same room. So I just felt lucky that we got that done, even though we couldn't tour and we couldn't do the traditional rollout. It was nice to be able to give it to the fans.
You three were named to the Time 100 in 2006, which is amazing because that's the last time you released an album. It was also 3 years after you had been publicly the target of backlash after some negative comments about George W. Bush. And it's interesting because so much has changed since then in terms of how audiences react to artists speaking out. And it doesn't feel like people say that you should just shut up and sing anymore. So are you encouraged by the changes that you felt happening in terms of how fans relate to public figures?
Well, I'll just say first, I'm really glad we're now allowed to not shut up and sing. We're allowed to have an opinion now, apparently. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that change. And some artists credit us with kind of being the guinea pigs and having to take the heat just so maybe a little more of that can happen. And I'm proud of that. I'm glad people like Taylor Swift is coming into her own and realizing she doesn't have to mask who she is, especially to her country music fans. And it seems like today everybody has a platform. So it's not just artists. Everybody can say whatever they want, for better or for worse. There are aspects of it I hate on social media, where things that aren't true get perpetuated, and it stokes up a lot of fear in people. And an artist might say one thing that they should have probably said a different way, and then they're just kind of, everybody piles on. So in that respect, I think there are some negatives as well.
One of the biggest changes, besides how artists and their fans interact, is with your group specifically. This summer, you changed your name, no small thing. You dropped the Dixie. What has that felt like? Why did you feel it was necessary, and why right now this summer?
Well, we had wanted to change our name for a long time, I think since the controversy. Just it was really weird to us and a surprise that people I feel like we've always been outspoken and honest about who we are, and I don't think we try to make it a point to, we don't preach from the stage. We don't feel, we do feel like we're musicians and that's what we do best, and that's what we want to do when we're on stage performing. So there's not a lot of preaching from the stage and that sort of thing. But so it was weird when people thought we were something that we so weren't. And so at that point I was just like, ugh, like this word Dixie is like, ugh, it feels gross right now. And so, but it also seemed like nobody was asking us to do it. Nobody ever had a problem with the word Dixie. Everybody always had a problem with the word chicks. And so it just seemed like, okay, why change something when you've had all of the success and it's a brand, when people aren't even asking you to. It's like creating a problem that nobody's asking you to create. And then with George Floyd's murder and all of that happening, and a lot of things were changing. And when I saw that NASCAR had banned the Dixie flag, I just immediately was like, okay, we're done, we're doing this. And of course everyone completely agreed. And We had to wait, it was like 2 weeks from when we made the decision to do it and when we actually did it, just because we wanted to get all of our legal ducks in a row. And I mean, the Chicks is not that original of a name, as far as that's just a very standard word. We didn't know if we'd be able to get it legally cleared. We also thought there's probably a million bands called the Chicks. Like, it just seems like something people would be called already. And luckily there was just one, a sister duo in New Zealand, and they said they would happily share the name with us. So
what I love about it is it seems like you're doubling down on criticisms that may have been leveled at you before. It's very tongue-in-cheek in a way. You've always been pigeonholed by the industry as just a group of girls, perhaps, and women in general and in country music especially have to work twice as hard for half as much airtime, if that much. Do you think there has been progress in the last few years since you released music in the past towards improving that experience for women in music?
I think it's gotten worse, don't y'all? I mean, as far as the country format, I mean, don't really know what genre we're in, but from what we hear, when we were coming out, there were a lot more females on radio than there are now. And so there was what was it called, the Tomato Gate or whatever. So
right.
One of the programmers said, well, men make up the main part of the salad. They're the lettuce and the women are the tomatoes. And these women are like, they were all up in arms, and they should have been. We weren't being played then, so it didn't have any effect on us. But I think in recent years, it's been definitely male dominated.
Yeah. What kind of changes would you like to see to make the industry more equal, or give women and people of color and artists of color more access? Or what do you think fans can do to support those kinds of changes?
Well, listen, that's just talking about radio and a radio format. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think on the whole, the industry, with how many ways you can get your music and how many ways you can find new music. I mean, I don't think my children have listened to 1 hour of terrestrial radio in their whole lives. Maybe when we're in Hawaii, because it's kind of fun to listen to the locals. But that's it. So I actually think that levels the playing field a lot more, because you're not dependent on, some guy smoking a cigar behind a desk deciding if you're going to get played on the radio. And back in the day, that was how you made it big, was to be played on the radio. And now there's so many options, and it's, I feel like it's just diversified music so much. You can get your hands on whatever it is you're looking for, and I think that's awesome. And so we honestly don't even I know I'm not just speaking for myself, because I guarantee you, if I was like, hey guys, where are we on the charts? We don't know. We don't know. We really just wanted to make this record and have our fans like it. And I've always cared too what critics say, because I think that they're critics for a reason. And so, people always, I don't care what the critics say, I just care what my fans say. I do want to have, an album that critics don't bash, because we put so much effort into it, and you feel like it's really good. And so it'd be a real bummer if the consensus was wrong.
Do you have a vision for what comes next in music? You talked about how there are all these different platforms that especially younger generations can access. When shows return, when some kind of normalcy returns, what do you think your experience as artists may look like, and as performers?
I don't know. The 5G stuff intrigues me a little bit, as far as being able to create, because the live show, there's nothing like live. You want to play to the people, but to be able to film in new ways and create a world, whether it's virtual reality or whatever it is around the experience, I think would be super fun. But I don't, we're just ready to get this pandemic over with and get on the road, to be honest.
It's the best part of what we do. I mean, we have a lot of fun in the studio, but we were so looking forward to the tour starting in June, and our kids were geared up, and Natalie's boys were rehearsing. They both have bands, and they were going to open the tour, and we had most of the visuals kind of sorted out what it's going to look like, and doing set lists. And yeah, we just feel like kind of the rug got pulled, and just not knowing if it can even happen in the same way even 2 years from now. You know, I think we're looking at reinventing the way we interact with an audience live for a long time to come. So yes, we are constantly thinking about, you know, what nobody knows what the landscape's going to be like, but technology has come a long way, and there might be some intriguing options for how to do that in the future.
So I think I mentioned this, but I've been listening to your album a lot lately, and the song for her, which you are performing today for TIME100 Talks, has felt newly poignant after the passing this weekend of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So many of the lyrics, there's one, so dig a little deeper and be a whole lot louder. It sounds to me like a mantra she may have used or said at one point. And one we could all use. So I have to ask, where are you guys finding that internal strength to dig deep right now and work harder?
Well, it's interesting, that song in particular, in the studio, we discussed whether we would do an excerpt of hers to start the song for the album. And we eventually decided not to do that.
Jack had we arrived at the studio one day, because we'd been working on that song the night before, and we get there the next day, and he's always in there, you know, working on stuff. And we hear her voice in the song, and we're like, what's happening? What did you do? And he's like, this could be cool, Ruth, you know, RBG. And her words were really awesome. We, for whatever reason, chose not to put it in. But yeah, so that is a coincidence I hadn't really connected.
At the end, where Nat kind of starts humming at the end, she kind of came in and floated over with some of her more poignant quotes. And now I'm wishing we had done that.
We'll do a remix.
Yeah. Clearly she was someone that the three of you looked up to, as so many women have in the US. Are there any specific lessons or things that you took from her and from her example?
I think about the era in which she grew up in and raised in, and for her to have such amazingly progressive and insightful views on what's right and what's wrong and justice is amazing. I don't know of many people of her generation that would have been so ahead of their time, before their time. So, you know, we're all raising kids, and we're all trying to impart some kind of wisdom. And she is a woman that women like us, you know, they're a role model. And the older you get, the fewer role models that are older than you are left. And it's just really sad that this very strong, persuasive role model is gone. But her legacy lives on in what she did and what she said and what she stood for.
And we need women like her on the bench. We need it. And so it's a scary time right now.
You know, it's never too late too. I've been, you know, deep diving into a lot of her history. I'd seen the documentary and things, obviously, but was listening to the Daily podcast this morning, and don't remember ever knowing that, you know, she didn't start off being this feminist and this badass. Like and she talked about that. It wasn't even a concept. Like it didn't even cross her mind. Like, well, I'm going to go out there and fight for women. It was fighting for equality. And so the way she did a lot of that initially was because how she knew it would go over better is to fight for male equality. And then that led the way for female equality. And you know, I learned too, I didn't realize that she wasn't always this loved figure by women, because she didn't agree with the Roe v. Wade decision. She believes in the right to choose, but she was smarter than everybody gave her credit for, because she didn't like the way the Supreme Court just changed everything all at once, and everything surrounding abortion was constitutionally legal. And she said, the fact that we did it that way, we're going to face problems in the future for tearing it down, because they didn't go through that rigorous step-by-step legal process to make it stick. And now we are maybe about to see that come true, unfortunately.
Our generation, the things that we take for granted sometimes, and then you hear all these things that she accomplished during her tenure, took the thought of not being able to sign your own documents or buy your own house as a woman. I mean, just the simple things that we take for granted.
I can't trust you with a credit card unless you have a man overseas.
I handle it.
It feels unfathomable now, but it was so recent, and it shows to me how much the country can change in a short period of time. And even looking at you three and how responses to your music and your public persona have changed just in the last 15 years, I think is another great example of that change. Are you hopeful for the potential for change? What's giving you hope for the next generation?
I can't allow myself to be hopeful until November. I have to. I actually don't. I actually will lose all hope in November. So if Trump,
I'm hopeful because of our daughters and the way that they act, and the things that are important to them or that they can brush off are totally light years ahead of where I was when I was 15. My oldest is 15. I have an 8-year-old. And the way she approaches the world is just open-eyed and like, of course I can do that. Of course, of course it's going to be this way. We have to change things systematically, but I think the girls of the next generation are automatically stepping into the rights of what they should be allowed to do. And so I think I'm hopeful because of the next generation.
Yeah.
Well, if we lose our democracy, their spirit won't matter. But listen, I hate to get real negative. But they can make a difference in a different country.
Marty, what about you? Anything that giving you hope these days, or a bit split?
Hard. It's so hard. I mean, literally sometimes I have to unplug and disconnect because I'm so scared of what could happen this next term and what it would mean. So, I think our collective message has been just please vote. We're just praying that all the people just vote so that they have a voice. Because my positivity lies in feeling like what is right and what is just is in the hearts of the majority. I have to believe that, or else I'm super depressed. So if everybody votes, I definitely think we have a chance. That's my hope.
Thank you so much, Natalie, Marty, and Emily for joining us for Time 100 Talks. And I know you have a performance of For Her, your new song off of the album Gaslighter, still ahead.